mental toughness is not just mental, it's emotional, it's physical, and it's spiritual. And the whole issue of health is the centerpiece of the whole thing. The healthier you are as a person in all dimensions, the better competitor you will be. So I didn't have it 100% right in the beginning. I just did the best I could. But we have a much better understanding of the things that actually make a difference in the lives of people as they grow older. And my biggest issue is, let's make the tennis experience not just about winning, but about winning with character, winning in a way that actually helps you and all those around you be better, stronger human beings. And mental health is the centerpiece of that whole dynamic. I am delighted to be with you and delighted to talk about this new kind of awareness of this area of mental health. As you said, it's been a kind of a passion of mine for a long time, but it's really exciting what's happening now. I think we're really bringing it to the forefront, and rightly so. And so I really appreciate the work you're doing on this, and hope we can move the ball forward on this. In 1979, and then it was reissued in 1982. It was a mental toughness training for sport. And it was rejected by 19 publishers because they didn't know what the word mental toughness actually meant. It made no sense. And then my father said, he was a professional baseball player. And he said, it really makes sense to me. I'm going to publish 5,000 copies for you. And that was really hard for him because he really didn't have a whole lot of money. But it was kind of just distributed amongst various people, and it became an unbelievable phenom worldwide bestseller to kind of launch this whole thing about mental toughness. And it's been an evolutionary process for me. Mental toughness is not just mental, it's emotional, it's physical, and it's spiritual. And the whole issue of health is the centerpiece of the whole thing. The healthier you are as a person in all dimensions, the better competitor you will be. So I didn't have it 100% right in the beginning. I just did the best I could. But we have a much better understanding of the things that actually make a difference in the lives of people as they grow older. And my biggest issue is, let's make the tennis experience not just about winning, but about winning with character, winning in a way that actually helps you and all those around you be better, stronger human beings. And mental health is the centerpiece of that whole I played dynamic. 9 years of baseball. He was my coach. And he was, he got hurt in training camp and he couldn't pitch anymore. But he had a son who could pitch. And so every single day I would throw 1,000,000 balls. They didn't know at that time that you're not supposed to throw that many. I could throw sliders and curveballs and knuckleballs as an 11-year-old.
Wow.
But I was pitching at the age of 14, and I just threw my arm out. I've never been able to throw a ball since.
Wow.
And now we know they count the number of pitches
right.
that you play. So I was also a pretty good basketball player. And my father was also a tennis player, my mom was. And so I was able to play tennis and play basketball, but tennis is the sport that captured me in a way that nothing else has. And I've had a love affair with tennis my whole life.
And why did tennis capture you in a way that was different?
I can't really explain it, but I have 16 members of my family, and I've given them the disease all across the whole spectrum. And they're all addicts. My youngest son played professional tennis, Jeff, and it has been a crowning force in his life. And all of my sons I have 7 grandkids, and they all play tennis. And I've gotten a couple of the wives, my daughter-in-laws, who didn't play. We go to all these events, and they never played. And so we got them involved at a 2.5 level.
Right.
and they are now so addicted to tennis. It's the most unbelievable thing. They're starting a kind of a national movement called Serving Tennis Women. The whole idea is to get people started in tennis because it's done such remarkable things for her and connected to her family. And it's something I'm very excited about. So she's her husband, she's lost weight. She's on fire. She's excited. She plays in all these leagues.
Right.
It's crazy, but it's so good for her family. And so we have tennis vacations. Now everyone can play. We just came back from Palm Springs, and everyone plays tennis. We have a draw that everyone plays, and they're all quite good. And it's quite remarkable how once you get something started like that, it is a multi-generational sport, very low risk of injury. And it's just so good for people to be involved in some kind of physical activity like that. I got a late start in tennis, but I just fell in love with the sport, but I wasn't that successful as a young competitor. And I started looking for resources that would help me become a better, stronger competitor. Basketball, I was a very good competitor, but an individual sport like tennis was different, and I got nervous. I had all the issues there. Got frustrated, had a temper, all those things. And, I just started to reflect on the kinds of things that the person I wanted to be as a competitor. And at that time, there were a lot of great players. And, even today, someone like Roger Federer or even Carlos Alcaraz, they have this just incredible, kind of poise under stress. They can concentrate. They're able to, disconnect, the law of disengagement and detachment, so to speak. It's remarkable. And everywhere I go, I try to, talk about that, because we really want to train the body to be able to deal with stress in a dynamic way, to give your very best and to let it go, because if you don't let it go, you carry it into the next point. And I began to get that as a young player, and I started to become a much better competitor, and people wanted to know what I was doing, and then eventually I put it into writing, and it actually came out of my soul, because that's where I was. The pain and kind of suffering that an athlete feels when they're not reaching their potential, and it kind of connected to, and I did this research on what I call the ideal performance state. When you're performing at your best, what are you really feeling? And we built a kind of a step-by-step program to try to get to that ideal place. And it really, for me, was the foundation of what I came to understand with competitive strength. The word that is currently used is zoning. For me, it was the ideal performance state. When you stepped into it, it's magical. And we've all been there. But you want to try to bring that as much as you can under voluntary control, to be able to be at your best at the most critical times. And it is a learned skill. I've learned that over the years. It's acquired. It's not something you're born with. You will occasionally pass through it accidentally, and you just light it up, and you go, what the world was that? That's how I want to play the rest of my life. And you try it the next day, and it's so mysterious. It's like some kind of visitation from the gods that you're absolutely perfect. And then it goes away, and you wonder that you get very superstitious. You get almost crazy about what it is that brings that special state on. And what it really is a lot of hard work tuning into the kinds of being relaxed, being calm. It's physical, it's emotional. You have to eat properly. You have to get enough sleep. It's a very delicate chemistry. It's like we're all beakers of chemicals, and if we get them all right, you light it up. And the more you train in the right ways, the more likely this will occur when you're in that dynamic situation of stress. But most people get too nervous, the cortisol levels rise, and the mix gets crazy. And you see it amongst even the very best players in the world. If they lose it a little bit, but they're much quicker to get it back. They may lose a few points, they may lose a set, because they kind of started focusing too much on things that they can't control. They bring it back, they get back to the moment, they go back into that kind of that beaker of joy and really gratitude and a sense I will never give up. When you watch Rafa play, he was always positive, always gave 100% effort. And those are the only things we can control as competitors. And if you get that and let it go, the next point has to be completely history. You can learn from it, then you move forward. And that was, those lessons come slowly, just like learning a great forehand or backhand, but people don't practice it because they're so confused by it. It seems like because they can't see it, it's almost like a gift from the gods, and they just don't get enough of it. So it's a really interesting issue. When I started, when someone, most people never wanted to say that they were working with a psychologist. And so it was very hard for me to actually put my feet into any kind of a career because athletes were ashamed to talk about it. It was almost like, even though it was in the area of mental toughness, it suggested you have an emotional or psychological weakness, because psychology was about, basically, trying to fix things that were somehow not aligned properly mentally or emotionally. And but that whole era now has shifted. There's another whole kind of framework around positive psychology, and it really has, I look at exercise physiology. You look at almost all the sports. Everyone has an exercise physiologist, and in the early years, no one had one. It was
right.
like, you just did your thing. You played your sport. But now they have nutritionists. And now they have people that they can seek out from the mental and emotional side. Just like you're at your academy, you have a mental performance coach, and everyone sees them as part of the team. So it elevates this. It's not a weakness to seek help in this area. It actually is just another strength that'll help you become a stronger person and a better competitor. So the visibility now that Naomi Osaka and Raducanu and so many of the players now, they're very open about this. I think it's absolutely terrific. And you're right. I don't think there's ever been more pressure. I had a conversation last night with a mother whose daughter just got into UCLA, and she is literally every second, she's a very high-level competitor. She's competitive in everything. She has no time in her life, no space. There's not a lot of joy. It's all meeting these performance expectations. And her mother knows when she gets into UCLA, it's going to be nothing more but a complete line of additional pressures in sport as well as in her academics. And she asked me the question. She said, how do you ever prepare kids for this? Everything is like maximum effort. There's no time to just kind of smell the roses and enjoy your life. And the kids begin to wonder, is this what life is all about? Will I ever have a time to sit back and kind of reflect on the kinds of things that I really want to do and the joys in my life? And I thought it was a great question because that's what's happening. And so parents and coaches have to realize, I worked out this stress recovery relationship, that where every dose of stress, you have to have an equivalent dose of recovery, or you start to get closer to burning out, and your ability to enter the zone and enter this special ideal performance state goes away. We've got to understand we are all oscillatory creatures in an oscillatory universe, and every biopotential in the human physiology is oscillatory. Nothing is a straight line. It's all energy expenditure and energy recovery. And we have to do that physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. Spiritually meaning your deepest values, your beliefs, what you care about, your purpose in life. We have to replenish that. And if we don't get the right balance, people get out on the edge and they lose the joy in life. And a lot of kids just can't take it. Parents keep pushing, and unfortunately they should be pushing for balance or some kind of sense of how all this comes together in life so that you have a great life and you can enjoy your life. And so I'm always talking to parents about this issue. It's not just pushing. For a long time, everyone thought whoever, for instance, in golf, whoever hit the most balls is going to be the best. And so they have their kids out there hitting millions of balls with bloody hands. I've witnessed it. I've been right next to them. And they just say you have to gut it out, and one day you will thank me for this. And I say, no one's going to thank you for this. What you're doing here is almost a form of child abuse. You've got it wired up wrong. So immediately I get fired because they don't want to hear that message. Right. And but I've tried to be on that wavelength for most of my career. And I'm very happy that the USTA and the Sports Science Committee is really understanding and really putting a lot of their intellectual knowledge in helping players find balance. The WTA has done a remarkable job in their player development efforts to try to help protect players through this journey. And I have such great respect for all of them that have worked so hard. They've made a huge contribution, and they've affected all women's sports because they've been out in front leading the way on that. And I have had great admiration for all the people on that committee. It's been and that age eligibility committee that has tried to protect these young players from the enormity of the pressure. And you see it when they finally win a great tournament or maybe out of the blue, all of a sudden they go into a spiral because the pressures are so great, and it's really hard to prepare a 19 or 20-year-old for those pressures. The estimates are that we make around 35,000 decisions a day. That's a lot. And we make somewhere around 245,000 a week and over 12 million in a given year. So that is now any one of those decisions can set us in a trajectory that can be really unfortunate. And most of those decisions are automatic. When I ask people, what are you referencing when you make your decisions? They really are very foggy. They don't really know exactly. They just kind of, I think this is what I should do. Yeah. They're not sure what it is. So it's so interesting to both Sheila and I, my co-authors, are brilliant. Sheila Walker Olson is a brilliant behavioral, she's in behavioral genetics, and she's a very, competent researcher. We wanted to do something that was really based on as much available science as we could. And what we really came to was that it's really surprising that parents don't know how to teach decision making. They don't even teach it. They don't. If you ask them how do they teach it, they have no idea. It's not taught in kindergarten. It's not taught in grade school. Yeah. It's not taught in junior high or high school. It's not taught in colleges. It's not taught in most graduate schools, and it's not taught in most corporate universities. But I would argue, and this is my 18th book, that of all the books I've written, I just wish I had come to this much earlier, but I just don't think the science was fully, birthed yet. But I think it's the most important work I have done in my entire career, that to try to help people understand the importance of decision making and how do you teach it? How do you teach it to your children, and how do leaders in the corporate world take advantage of what we've learned so that, like maybe every Friday at 10 o'clock, there's a meeting of your direct reports, and we take apart every major decision that was made, let's say in the previous week or in the last month, and we look at how it played out and what were the processes you went through to get to that decision. So rather than being an automatic, that's the fast side of our brain, and our brains have a preference for that because it doesn't consume as much energy. The economics is much easier. But to be deliberate and intentional and to have a specific way of handling that is a very different way for most people of managing this space between the stimulus and response. We feel much more comfortable just kind of flying from the hip. And when we look at the data, people end up making some of the worst decisions possible in situations where they haven't been nearly comprehensive enough and looking at it through a number of lenses. Had they done that, they probably would not have made that decision. But you're right. Sometimes you go through every possible, kind of maneuver you can, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you still got it wrong. But I will tell you, you probably won't feel like you need to beat yourself up because you did everything you could to make, and under those same circumstances, armed with the same information, you would probably make the same decision again.
That's a great way to clarify that. I think you're right. I mean, I don't remember decision making as a something in a curriculum. In fact, I've read plenty of books and interviewed plenty of people, but I feel like most of what's taught about this is about biases, and you had some of that, about process, and you've got some of that. But I don't remember seeing a book that puts such impactful focus on health and how it impacts decision making. In fact, I think it's undeniable in the book that holistic health, the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, it's the vital starting point for wise decisions, right? And so why is this maybe more important than what we realize?
Well, it's so interesting. As the co-founder of the Human Performance Institute in Florida that we eventually sold to Johnson & Johnson, but by the time I left, we had somewhere around 400,000 people. And we had the most amazing faculties, commander of the SEALs, commander of the Blue Angels, fighter pilots, elite instructors from the Air Force Academy, gold medalists, silver medalists. And we had a faculty that was absolutely unimaginable.
That's been so fun.
And it was the most fun I've ever had in my life by far.
Yeah.
And we also had the most incredible collection of people trying to go to the next level. Everything from sumo wrestlers from Japan spent 6 months with us. World class chess champions, special forces in the military, Blue Angels precision flying team, 17 number ones in the world in sport. It just goes on and on. Surgeons, dentists. And we were always looking for what are the things that can be done to improve their ability to manage stress and to actually execute when it's really important in a mission-specific venue. Yeah. And I'm a data guy, love big data sets and data trends. And when we looked at the data, I was shocked. It started trending in a particular direction. And what we finally concluded was that what we were doing in all of the training we were doing with all these diverse populations was only one thing. We were getting them healthier. We were getting them healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And then they would go to the next level automatically if they were capable of doing it. But health is the igniter of performance. And then as we started to prepare for this book, we began to realize that data is directly connected to decision making. So if you are physically tired, beat up, you haven't taken care of yourself, you haven't eaten, you haven't slept right, you go back and you analyze a lot of the decisions that were made, and they were not the good ones. They were often made when you were in a physical deficit. Sometimes you have to make a decision, but it's compromised, and you have to really recognize you're probably stepping into some pretty treacherous territory here if you're making decisions when you're exhausted, when you're completely burned out, when you just physically are unable to bring your best forward. Emotionally, we learned that when you are in a hot positive or hot negative space, you probably need to cool off in either direction before you make your decision.